3 days after I buried my wife of 41 years, my son-in-law was walking through my living room with a notepad. My name is Harold Mercer. I am 67 years old. I spent 35 years as a civil engineer in Columbus, Ohio. I know how to read a situation. I know when something is being measured for a purpose, and I knew exactly what Garrett Calloway was doing in my house that Tuesday afternoon, even before he pulled out his phone and started photographing the backyard. Ruth had been gone 3 days. I set my coffee mug down on the kitchen counter and watched him through the window. He was walking the fence line, stopping at the corners, looking back at the house. His phone was up. He was framing shots, not family photos, not memories. Square footage, lot lines, curb appeal. I did not say anything. I went to the living room and sat in my chair and waited for him to come back inside. I need to back up a little because none of this makes sense without understanding who Ruth was. We met in 1981 at a mutual friend's cookout on the east side of Columbus. She was a 4th grade teacher at an elementary school 2 miles from where I was working at the time. She had dark hair and a way of paying attention to people that made you feel like what you were saying actually mattered. I asked her if she wanted to take a walk around the block to get away from the noise. She said yes. We were married 14 months later, 41 years. We built everything together. The house in Columbus, the savings, 2 kids. Nadine came first in 1985, Neil in 1989. I worked construction management and then civil engineering for the county. Ruth taught school until she retired in 2016. We were not wealthy people. We were people who paid attention and did not waste what we had. When Ruth got her diagnosis in 2021, everything shifted. Nadine and her husband Garrett flew in from Seattle more often. Owen called more. Ruth's sister drove up from Cincinnati on weekends. I understood all of it. When someone you love is sick, you want to be near them. That is human. What I started noticing somewhere in the middle of all those visits was a shift in the conversation. Less about Ruth, more about the house, more about what I was planning to do with things, more about whether I had spoken to a financial planner lately. Ruth passed in October. Nadine and Garrett flew in and stayed through the funeral. Neil drove over from his apartment across town. He had been coming by twice a week since Ruth got diagnosed. He never announced it. He just showed up. Nadine and Garrett were still there when the first weekend passed. I thought they were staying to help. I thought that for about 3 days, day 3 was when I saw Garrett with a notepad. When he came back inside, he said he had just been getting some air. He said it easily, the way people say things they have rehearsed. I nodded and told him dinner was in an hour. I did not mention the phone. I did not mention the fence line. That evening, after dinner, Nadine sat me down at the kitchen table. She had a folder. She said she and Garrett had been thinking about how much work the house was for one person, and that maybe it made sense for me to start looking at some options. She said she had found some communities. She called them active senior communities, and that she had already spoken to someone at one of them about availability. She had brochures. Then she slid a piece of paper across the table. She called it a financial management form. She said it would just make things easier, help her manage bills and accounts on my behalf while I was getting through all of this. She said it the way you explain something simple to someone who might not follow along easily. I looked at the paper. I looked at my daughter. I told her I would think about it. Neil came by the next morning with coffee and a bag of groceries. I showed him the form before I said anything else. He read it slowly, the way he reads everything. He turned it over to check the back. Then he set it down flat on the table and said, without looking up, "Dad, this transfers account authority. If you sign this, Nadine can move money out of your accounts without asking you first." I sat with that for a while. I asked him if he was sure. He said he was. He had been working as a paralegal in Columbus for 6 years. He knew what he was reading. I put the form back in the folder and set it on the counter. I told Neil I needed a few days to think. He said he understood. Before he left, he stood in the doorway and said, "Don't sign anything until you talk to Barbara." Barbara Finch had been my lawyer since 2004. He knew her name because Ruth had mentioned her more than once in the last year. I had not thought much about that at the time. I thought about it now. I had a security camera system installed 2 years earlier when there had been a string of break-ins 2 streets over. I had set it up myself over a weekend. 4 cameras covering the front door, the back door, the side gate, and the driveway. I had not mentioned it to Nadine or Garrett. It had not come up. The morning after Neil left, I pulled up the footage from the day Garrett was in the backyard. He had not been alone. At 2:14 in the afternoon, while I had been upstairs going through some of Ruth's things in the bedroom closet, Garrett had opened the side gate and let in another man. The man had a clipboard and a measuring wheel. He walked the property in a systematic way, checked the foundation on the south side, stepped off the distance from the house to the rear fence, and spent about 4 minutes on the back deck writing things down. Then Garrett walked him back out through the gate, The whole thing took 18 minutes, a property appraiser. My son-in-law had arranged a formal appraisal of my home 3 days after my wife's funeral, without asking me, without telling me, without any acknowledgement that the house belonged to me and not to him. I watched the footage twice. Then I closed the laptop and sat at the kitchen table for a long time. I called Barbara Finch the following Monday morning. Her assistant put me through without making me wait, which told me Barbara had said to expect my call. I told her everything. The form, the appraiser footage, the brochures for the senior community. She listened all the way through without interrupting, which is one of the things I have always valued about her. When I finished, she said, "Harold, before we get into all of that, I need to tell you something about Ruth's estate that I think you need to hear first." I told her to go ahead. Barbara explained that Ruth had come to see her in February of the previous year. Ruth had updated her estate plan quietly and completely, without telling me the full details, not to hide something from me. Ruth was not that kind of person. She had done it because she wanted things handled correctly. And she knew that if she told me everything, I would ask questions and she would have to explain, and at that point she was already tired in ways she did not want to talk about. In the fall of 2020, Ruth had used money from her aunt's inheritance combined with savings she had been building in her own account over many years to purchase a piece of property in Asheville, North Carolina, a 3-bedroom cedar cabin on 3 acres in the Blue Ridge foothills with a wood stove and a screened porch that faced west toward the mountains. She paid $310,000 cash. She registered it in her name only. In her will, she left it to me. Nadine was not mentioned in connection with the cabin. Barbara had helped Ruth draft everything. The will was clean and thorough. Ruth's life insurance, which I had insisted we keep current every single renewal, named me as primary beneficiary and Neil as secondary. Nadine was not named there either. I sat with that information for a while before I said anything. I thought about something Ruth had said once, maybe 3 or 4 years ago. We had been on the back porch on a Sunday afternoon in September, and she had said, almost like a passing thought, "I found something I want to show you someday." Something for later. I had assumed she meant a restaurant she had read about or a state park she wanted to visit. I had said something like, "Sounds good," and gone back to the paper I was reading. She had meant this. She had meant a cedar cabin in the Blue Ridge foothills with a screened porch and 3 acres and her name on the deed. I asked Barbara why Ruth had done it the way she did, registered it only in her own name, kept it separate. Barbara was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "Ruth was very clear about what she wanted the property to accomplish. She wanted it to be yours and only yours. She did not want it reachable." I understood what that meant. I did not need her to say it more plainly. I told Barbara about the $67,000. I had checked the joint account the week before calling her and found a pattern of transfers I did not recognize. Small amounts, irregular intervals, going back to November. The bank traced the IP address to a device registered in Seattle, Garrett's laptop. Nadine's name was the authorizing party on each transfer. She had not waited for me to sign the financial management form. She had used the secondary access that we had added to the account back in 2019 during Ruth's first health scare, when the doctors thought it might be her heart and we had wanted someone who could step in if something happened quickly. Something had happened, just not what we expected, and not then. The access had stayed on the account. I had not thought to remove it. Barbara told me to give her 48 hours. She said not to sign anything, not to move any money myself, and not to say anything to Nadine or Garrett yet. I said I understood. After I hung up, I called Neil. I told him what Barbara had said about the cabin. He was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "Mom bought you a way out." I said that was about right. He said, "Good. What do you need me to do?" I told Neil I needed help packing over the next 3 weekends without anyone noticing. He showed up Saturday morning with coffee and a roll of packing tape and did not ask any more questions than that. We were methodical about it. The things that mattered most went first. Ruth's photographs, her books, the cedar box she kept on her dresser with the letters we had written each other before email made letters feel unnecessary. Her watercolor supplies and the 4 small paintings she had finished in the last 2 years. Those went in a separate box with extra padding. Then my tools, my files, the papers I needed. A moving company Neil recommended, a small family operation out of Westerville, came on 3 separate Saturdays. By the 2nd week of January, the better part of my life was on its way to Asheville. While all of that was happening quietly, Nadine was still coming by the house. The visit I remember most clearly was a Thursday afternoon in late December. She came alone without Garrett. She brought a casserole, which I appreciated, and then she sat down at the kitchen table and said she was worried about me. She said I seemed to be withdrawing. She said it gently, the way you say something when you have decided what the other person is feeling and you want them to confirm it. I told her I was doing the best I could. She said she understood that grief was hard, and that she just wanted to make sure I had support. Then she brought out the folder again. The same folder from the first week. She slid the financial management form across the table a second time. She said she had spoken to someone at a financial planning firm. She called it Lakeview Financial Group, and that they had advised her that having a family member with account access was standard practice for men in my situation. Men in my situation, I let that sit there for a moment. I asked her what situation she thought I was in. She said, "Dad, you're 67 years old. You just lost Mom. You are living alone in a house that is too big for one person. It makes sense to have someone who can step in if something comes up." I said, "Someone already can. My lawyer has everything she needs." Nadine looked at me for a moment. Then she said, "Barbara Finch is not family." I said, "No, she is not. But she is thorough, and right now that matters more to me." Nadine did not push further that evening. She finished her coffee and said she would check in later that week. After she left, I stood on the front porch in the December cold and watched her car disappear around the corner. The maple Ruth had planted 22 years ago was bare. The street was quiet. I went inside and called Neil. I told him the timeline needed to move faster. What I had not told Nadine, and what I did not plan to tell her until everything was already done, was that Barbara had already taken action. She had removed Nadine's secondary access from the joint account 4 days after our phone call. The remaining funds, less a reserve for current expenses, had been transferred into an account in my name only. Barbara had also sent a letter to Nadine's attorney of record, a name she had found in the county filings outlining the bank records showing the $67,000 in transfers, the IP address logs traced to Seattle, and a description of the security camera footage showing an unannounced property appraisal conducted on the premises 3 days after the death of the primary account holder. She had not filed anything yet. She was giving Nadine the opportunity to understand what the situation actually was before it became a formal legal matter. That was Barbara's way. Thorough, but not unnecessarily aggressive. Garrett called me on a Friday morning in early January. He said he had heard from their attorney and that there seemed to be some confusion about the account transfers. He said they had just been trying to help manage things during a difficult time. He said the word confusion 3 times in about 4 minutes. I told him I understood his position and that Barbara Finch would be the right person to speak with going forward. He said he would rather talk directly. I said I was sure he would, and I wished him a good weekend. I changed the locks on a Wednesday while Nadine and Garrett were at lunch with friends in Bexley. Front door, back door, side garage entrance. The locksmith was done in under an hour. I tipped him well and thanked him for being prompt. That afternoon, I packed the last of what I needed into the bed of my truck. The big furniture was already in Asheville. What was left in the Columbus house were the things that had been there when Ruth and I moved in, the things we had never gotten around to replacing, and Nadine and Garrett were welcome to work out what to do with them once the house listed. I drove south the next morning before it was light. I stopped once for gas and a cup of coffee in a small town off the interstate in Tennessee. The sky was starting to come up gray and pink over the ridge to the east. I sat in the parking lot for a few minutes and drank the coffee while it was still hot. Ruth had made that drive alone in the fall of 2020 when she went to close on the cabin. She had not told me where she was going. She had said she had some errands to run and that she would be back by Sunday evening. She had come home, made dinner, and sat across from me at the kitchen table with the same expression she always had, and I had not known that she had just bought us a way out of something that had not fully arrived yet. I thought about that for most of the drive. The cabin was at the end of a gravel road that wound through white pine and red oak for about a quarter mile before the trees opened up. I saw the roofline first, cedar shingles gone silver grey from weather, then the porch. Then the mountains behind it, still dark in the early morning, the ridgeline clean against a sky that was just starting to go pale blue. I sat in the truck for a minute before I got out. The front door key was in an envelope Barbara had mailed me the week before, along with a copy of the deed and the utility account information Ruth had set up. I let myself in and stood in the front room for a moment. Wood stove in the corner, pine floors, a small kitchen with a window above the sink that looked out toward the tree line. Everything clean and quiet and still. Ruth had been here. She had stood in this room. She had chosen it. I walked through each room slowly, 3 bedrooms, a bathroom with a clawfoot tub, a utility room off the kitchen. In the hallway, 4 small watercolor paintings hung in a row. Ruth's work, I recognized the style immediately. One was the view from the porch facing west. One was the creek that ran along the back of the property. One was the tree line at dusk. One was the mountain ridge at first light, the colors soft and careful. Exactly the way she saw things. She had been here more than once. In the kitchen, tucked into the window frame above the sink, there was a folded piece of note paper with my name on it in Ruth's handwriting. I opened it. 3 sentences. I'm not going to write them here. They belong to me. What I will say is that I stood at that kitchen window for a long time after reading it, looking out at the tree line, and understood for the first time since October that I was going to be all right. Nadine called in late January. I was sitting on the screen porch with a cup of coffee when my phone rang. She said she had spoken with a real estate agent and that the spring market in Columbus was strong. She said she and Garrett had been thinking that April would be the right window to list the house. She said it the way you report a decision that has already been made, not the way you raise a topic for discussion. I let her finish. Then I said, Nadine, I moved out 3 weeks ago. I have been in Asheville since the second week of January. There was a pause. What do you mean, Asheville? Your mother bought a property in the Blue Ridge in 2020. She left it to me in her will, the same will that Barbara Finch drafted and has on file, along with the complete documentation on the account transfers and the security footage from the day Garrett brought an appraiser onto my property without asking me. She did not say anything for a moment. I kept my voice even. I said, I do not want to use any of that material. That is not what I want from this. But I need you to understand that I have it, and I need you to understand what your mother understood, because she planned around this more than a year before she passed. Nadine said, she knew. I said, your mother knew you. She loved you anyway. What you do with that is your business going forward. I told her the Columbus house would sell on my timeline through an agent Barbara had recommended, and that the proceeds would be handled through Barbara's office. I told her that if she wanted to come to Asheville at some point, she was welcome to. I told her Ruth would have wanted to show her the mountains here. I left the rest unsaid. Some things a person has to work out on their own. I hung up and went inside and put the kettle on. Barbara handled the Columbus sale that spring. The house closed in April at a number that reflected 41 years of payments and careful maintenance. A paid-off house in a good Columbus neighborhood is worth something real. I gave Neil $50,000 from the proceeds. He called me that evening and was quiet on the phone for a moment before he said thank you. And the way he said it told me he was holding something back. I told him it was what his mother would have wanted, and I meant every word of it. Nadine received a portion as well, smaller than Neil's and intentional, not nothing. But the difference was deliberate, and she knew why. She called after the transfer came through. She said she was sorry. She said it without any qualifications attached to it, which I had not expected. I told her I heard her. I told her the door was open if she wanted to come up sometime. I told her Ruth had left her handprints all over this place and that someday Nadine might want to see that for herself. She said maybe. I told her maybe was enough for now. Garrett, I did not call. I had nothing to say to Garrett, and I did not see a reason to manufacture something. Neil drove up the first weekend of February. He arrived on a Saturday afternoon in his Civic with a bag of groceries and no announcement, which is exactly his way. He had Ruth's quality of showing up without making a production of it. We walked the property together in the late afternoon, through the white pine at the back of the lot, down toward the creek that runs along the eastern edge. The water was low for February, clear over the flat stones. Neil crouched down and looked at it for a moment the way you look at something you're trying to understand. How are you doing? He asked. Better, I said. Getting there? He nodded. We kept walking. We did not talk about Nadine or Garrett. We talked about Ruth instead, which we had not done properly since the funeral. We talked about things I had not thought about in years. The road trip she had planned for our 25th anniversary, every detail organized in a spiral notebook she had bought at a drugstore in 1981 and kept in her nightstand. The way she used to sit at the kitchen table on Sunday mornings with the crossword and a pencil, never a pen, and finish it without looking anything up. The time she had driven 4 hours in a snowstorm to sit in the bleachers at Neil's regional swim meet when he was 16, and he had not even placed, and she had acted like it was the best afternoon she had spent in years. Neil was quiet for a moment after that one. Then he said, she never made you feel like you owed her anything. I said that was right. That was exactly right. We went back to the cabin when the light started going. I made dinner, and we sat by the wood stove and talked until it was late. Before he went to bed, Neil stood in the hallway and looked at Ruth's 4 paintings for a while without saying anything. Then he said, she really liked it here. I said she had. He said, good. I'm glad she had it. I have a neighbor down the road named Carol Hendricks who runs a small outdoor outfitting operation, kayak rentals, and guided hikes for the tourists who come through in the warmer months. She stopped by in early March to introduce herself, and we ended up talking for about an hour on the porch. She mentioned that the extra acreage on the back of my property, particularly the creek section, might be useful for her guided hiking routes if I was ever open to it. I told her I would think about it seriously. I spent 35 years figuring out how things get built and what makes them hold together over time. A creek running through 3 acres of Blue Ridge foothills is not a problem to solve. It is something to take care of. I understand the difference now better than I did when I was younger. There is a town council meeting in September about a proposed development further up the peninsula. Carol asked if I would consider coming to speak. I told her I would be there. I have things to say about what gets built and what gets lost in the building, and I'm not going to sit on the porch and let someone else say them. I still talk to Ruth sometimes on the long walks. Not out loud, mostly, just in my head. I will notice something, the way the fog sits in the valley at first light, a deer track in the mud near the creek, something in the paper that would have made her laugh, and I will say something to her about it. I do not know if she can hear me. I'm not a man who holds strong opinions about what happens after, and I distrust certainty in either direction, but it helps me think, and thinking clearly is about the most useful thing I can do for myself right now. I walk past her 4 paintings every morning. I have her cedar box on the dresser in the bedroom. I have the note she left in the kitchen window frame, folded and kept in the top drawer of the nightstand on my side of the bed. She built this place for me before she knew how much I would need it. She did it quietly, without asking anyone's permission, and she left it exactly where I could find it. I found it. I'm grateful every day that I did. If you're watching this and something about it feels familiar, I want to say something to you directly. You do not need to be loud about protecting what you built. You do not need to make threats or get into fights. What you need is to pay attention, get the right people in your corner, and move before someone else moves for you. The law exists for exactly this situation. Document everything. Call your lawyer, act before you're asked to react. And if there is someone in your life who has been quietly looking out for you the way Ruth looked out for me, do not wait until it is too late to tell them you noticed. The best thing she left me was not the land or the cabin or the legal protection. It was the proof that she saw what was coming and loved me enough to do something about it. That is what I carry. That is what I'm building on.